I'm Angela Skurtu, and you can find me at www.therapistinstlouis.com. Today, I want to talk to you about how to take time out when you're having conflict with your partner. So, a lot of couples will get to points in their conflict where the conflict's just out of control. You're saying things you cannot take back, and nothing good will come of continuing in the conflict. And so a loose timeout is basically a way for a couple to table their conflict for a time. Now, in an old video I've talked about how to take a very specific timeout where it's like 1 to 2 hours and you come back and talk. But the longer that I have been doing this couple's work, the more I realize that some conflicts you really can't come back from, like in that same day. There are just some conflicts that are so difficult that couples really need to come back to over several weeks. So what it looks like to do this is you see that when you're talking through the conflict that it's not going anywhere, you're not listening to your partner, and actually that should be your first key. If in the conflict you aren't listening to your partner anymore, that is when I want you to start your conflict or start your timeout. Because at that point, you're not listening. All you're doing at that point is trying to convince your partner of your perspective, and only harm can happen from there. So, as soon as you notice that you're in a conflict and you're not listening to your partner, that's when you should say something to the extent of, hey, this isn't going well. Let's talk about this later. And here's the other thing. You guys got to give each other grace for even how this is done. If it's done early on, it can sound like I just said there, where it'll sound tense and you'll say, I don't think we should keep talking about this. Let's move on. But the reality is most couples wait long beyond that point before they take a timeout. So they will have been in conflict like maybe 10 minutes after they realize they're not really listening, or 20 or hours. Some couples have been in conflict for hours afterwards. So the point is, after 30 minutes, after 40 minutes, it'll sound more like, I can't talk to you anymore. I just need out. Or it'll sound more aggressive and not nice. I want people to learn to do it in a nice way, but I also want you to give each other grace when you've basically been doing it for too long and nobody's going to sound nice at that point. Grace just looks like, okay, if somebody's calling a timeout, I am going to step away. We're going to step away from this. And then in that space, what I really think people should be doing is, if it's gotten really bad, you shouldn't talk the rest of the night about that conflict. It could be the average, like I'd say my couples, there's an average time of anywhere from 1 to 2 days it takes to go back and talk about things to up to a week. I don't think more than a week should pass before you at least address it in some way. But I also want you guys to understand that there are still some conflicts that even a week later, you're not going to have the answer to the situation. And so one way to look at this is to think of this like a puzzle, a big puzzle piece. So if you have a 1,000-piece puzzle conflict, every time you come back to the table and address it a little bit, it's like you're taking a little corner and trying to put some of the pieces together. What I would rather couples do is come back about once a week, try to put some of the pieces together, but then take a break, just like you have a puzzle table, put it over here and just like, look, we're going to put this away. We're not getting anywhere. This isn't going well, until maybe a week later where you bring the puzzle back and you start talking through it. Maybe you put a few pieces together over here. But in those higher difficulty conflicts, it is better to touch it for a little bit and then step away from it. Touch it for a little bit and then step away from it. And so what couples need to do then, after a conflict has occurred and you've taken time out, is in your timeout, take some time to calm down from the initial emotions of that conflict. So for example, that evening you may need to go for a run, or you may need to play a video game, or you may need to just, take a nap. Some people need to take a nap. Some people need to go be with some friends. Some people, whatever you do something to get out of the initial emotions of that conflict. And what I would like to see couples do by the end of that first night is just acknowledge with each other, hey, I know that was a rough conflict. We are going to talk about this soon. I don't know when, but let's make sure we come back to this. That is something I would like for people to be able to address and just briefly acknowledge without jumping back in. So if your partner is trying to do this, then it's not okay for you to be like, oh yeah, we're going to talk about this and start the fight again. That's you being an asshole. No, like, you acknowledge back. Yeah, that was a rough conflict. We will talk about this again later. But you don't even have to specify when. That's how I've changed in my timeout belief system, is that there are some situations where it might take you guys a couple days. In that situation, then you're asking each other to table it. So if you think of it like that puzzle, you're putting it aside and intentionally at least acknowledging to each other, we will talk about this when we can, just now is not the best time. And then within the next day or two, it is important to at least acknowledge again with each other, hey, I know we still have that puzzle to get to. I'm still not ready for it. If you're not, like some people, if it was big, you're still not ready to talk about it by now. If you are ready to talk about it, you can put out there, hey, I am ready to talk about it when you are, but you still need to wait for your partner to be there. Because again, how you know you're in a place to talk about it is you have to be ready to listen to your partner. If you are not ready to listen to your partner, you are not ready to handle conflict effectively. And what I would want couples doing then after the 2-day period is, like, sometime by the end of the week, try to address it. If by the end of the week you don't have it, but you at least want to talk some, then there's at least some distance, and people can do one of those little puzzle piece talks, like I said, where you go to the corner, you try this, you try that, but then you set it aside. If it still isn't going anywhere, then you take a break, let another week pass, think about it again, come up with new ideas. And again, the big thing for you is keep in mind, is my brain in a space where I'm really willing to listen and I think I have some solutions? So that's how you would take a loose time out. This is Angela Skurtu, and you can find me at www.therapistintstlouis.com. Thank you very much.